This is $2,000 of Space Marines. It's approximately 4,000 points. And because I have a pile of shame so big that it hits the sky, I just gave myself 1 week to paint all of these 125 Space Marines of my custom chapters, the Night Templars. It was a huge week with some cool bases, a lot of airbrushing, a eternity on the gold, and I also followed the Codex Astartes with red and white helmets. I even did some decals. So let's see if I can paint $2,000 of Space Marines in just 56 hours. All my models were already prepped beforehand. I'm not crazy. But all the bases were not even started. So let's begin with base day. I wanted the army to have great bases, so even if it took longer, I made some cool ones. I took some rocks for characters and elites. I took little rocks to put on the bases of troops. I glued each rock with glue, makes sense, and then applied PVA glue for the sand. To secure the base, I diluted some PVA in water, and then applied it on the base to secure the sand. Once everything is done, I moved to the undercoat phase. I did it all with Airbrush. It's a thinner and cheaper undercoat than the spray one, but it takes much more time. I spent 2 hours and 20 minutes of my life undercoating those almighty 4,000 points of Space Marines. After the undercoat, it's basecoat time. And you know what? That's literally the exact same things, but in blue. That's a long step for sure, but you need to be focused to make a clean and smooth base coat. Okay, and next we're still airbrushing to make some shadows for the Marines. We'll use the airbrush as much as possible because it's faster than the brush. And honestly, I don't think that painting 125 Space Marines in 1 week is possible without an airbrush. So for the shadows, I mixed some black with the base color and applied it from below. Alright, all the Space Marines are shaded. Let's make some highlights. I took Counter Blue for the base coat, which is a dark blue, but I love saturation so much, and I highlighted them with Kaleido Sky. That's gonna make them look like a dark blue, perfectly highlighted. I really do love this combination. At the end of this step, we finish the blue, but we still need airbrushing. And we are gonna paint all the shoulder pads in white with it. That's a tricky step with the airbrush if you are not good at airbrushing. But for me it's okay. A little bit longer than the base, obviously, but fine. And after the base coat of Celestial Grey, I highlighted them with White Scar. Honestly, 2 days of full airbrushing is really painful for my fingers. Just a few more steps and I will be done with the airbrush. I based all the weapons in Abaddon Black and all the capes in Mephiston Red. And let's not forget the 2 Judiciaries. I highlighted the black with some Dark Reaper. I base coated their cape. Is that a cape? It's more like a leather coat, no? I don't know, but I painted them like leather. Next, I base coated all the tabards of the Blade Guard in Zandri Dust. And to finish, I based the cloak of the snipers with Storm Vermin fur and highlighted them with Carrickstone. And now I can say it, the airbrush is done. For the most part, because maybe in the future there's gonna be some little highlights. I spent a little bit more time than planned on the first 2 days. The first step with a brush is gonna be long, but in fact it's me who inflicted that on myself. We are going to edge highlight with Oath Blue the most visible edges of the power armor, and there's a lot of edges. The next step is to base coat some little parts of the miniatures. I painted all the gaps in the armor, and also some things that I haven't based with the airbrush, like the wheels of the bike in black, and sometimes finished some tricky areas that I didn't do with the airbrush. Then I painted in Renox hide all the things in leather. For most of the miniatures it's really quick, just 1 pocket. But for the infiltrators and other mini Phobos armor that was a lot longer. These guys have so many pockets, for what? What do they have in their pocket? Some things to cook? Some infiltration stuff? I need to know! Then I painted all the purity seals and cleaned some tabards with underdust. This step is really quick for the majority of the army. But the Blade Guard veterans and the characters have a lot of stuff to paint. Let's start a really quick step with the base coat of the faces. There are only some sergeants and characters without helmets, because the kit didn't have the option. If I have the choice for Space Marines, I always put the helmet. Unless it is a big characters like Gilliman, Lion Johnson or even a Chapter Master. On the other hand, if it's for Chaos Space Marine, I always put the face without the helmet. These guys don't care about danger. They are the danger. I based the skin with Bugsman's Glow and the hair with Adeptus Mechanicus Standard Grey. That's the longest paint name for grey, I think. Then I finished a little base coating steps with Death Guard Green for some grenades. Now it's probably the longest base coating step I've ever done in my life. You know what? At the end of this step, I'm gonna tell you how much time I spent on it. The step is, obviously, for some Space Marines, the gold! Shiny and majestic gold for the Warrior of the Imperium. The Retributor armor was in every single nightmares of mine at the end of this step. For the Phobos armor, it's okay. They don't have money and have only one shoulder with gold trim. But for the rest of the army, there are 2 gold trim on shoulder pads, the Aquila on the torso and some random stuff in gold. And when you get to the Blade Guard veterans, you become crazy! They have gold everywhere! In fact, I wonder if the Emperor completely lied to everybody, if it started the Great Crusade that was not for expansion of mankind, that was for mining some golds everywhere and create all these shiny things for his super soldiers army. I'm convinced that's why. Okay, fine. I'm done with the gold base coat. And you know what? Guess in the comment below right now, how much time do you think I spent on the gold step? I'll give you the answer after the next metallic steps, which is Leadbetter. Very similar than the gold step, but in shiny grey and for the weapons. So all the blades, chain blades and some horsepecks will be painted in the Leadbetter. I spent most of my time on the bike for the pipes. So the gold steps took me 7 hours and 52 minutes of my life. That's an entire day of painting gold. I have pushed myself to finish the Leadbetter after that, and in total, this day I've painted 11 hours and 22 minutes of metallics. So let's go back on the forgotten parts. I'm following the Codex Astartes for my chapter, so the helmet of the sergeants, veterans and characters cannot be blue. Here's what each helmet should look like. I also painted some little things like the wax of purity seals, or the shield on the banner. Well, all the base coats are done. We can move to the shade step. I shaded all the minis with only 4 different shades. I used Reclaimed Flesh shade for the gold, the Seraphim Sepia for tabors and purity seals, the Neon Oil for the metallics and red, and the Agrax Earth shade for anything that was not shaded by the other paints. The time required to apply all the shades is so long that I can directly move on to the highlight step after finishing the shading of the last miniatures. I started highlighting with the biggest task, the metallics. And I mean gold and Leadbetter. I highlighted both of them with Stormhorse Silver. For the Leadbetter, I highlighted some flat areas to make more contrast. On the blade, it works well. I highlighted the gold with Stormhorse Silver with kind of a dry brushing technique. That was not a real dry brushing. I just took my brush and applied the Stormhorse Silver like if I did a dry brushing. I think that makes the gold more shiny, and it's really quick instead of carefully edge highlighting every edges. Then let's start the next highlight with Wild Red Red for all the waxes and lenses, for the tabers and some purity seals. I used the technique that gives a very nice look but takes less time than the ordinary layering up technique. For this, you need to make some perpendicular lines with a slightly dilated Ushabti bones. Don't be focused on making perfect lines. That's the chaos created between the lines that will make everything look good. Then, let's start the last two highlights with a brush. I highlighted all the leather parts with Tusker fur, and I highlighted the hair with administration gray. Then, we move on to the decal steps. That's a great news! For the decals, I used the same technique for 10 years. I applied some hard coat on the shoulders and waited for it to dry. Then I moistened the decals in water and applied them on the shoulders. When the decals were at the right place, I applied another coat of hard coat. This quantity of decals is really a lot. Honestly, that was really tough to do. There are 125 Marines, and I want them to look great, so they have all some little decals on it. After this really long step, I move on to the last highlight with Airbrush. I highlighted a few clothes with Ride Rider Red. I could have done that with a brush, but it's quicker and better with the airbrush. The final step for the Marines with the airbrush is the plasma gun of the Hell Blasters. To make it look cool, next to my blue, I use Cyber Red Green. Well done! All the Space Marines are finished. We can move on to the real final step, painting the bases. I wanted them to look like an arid desert, really desaturated. That's how I imagine a desert on a planet with a little atmosphere. I based them in Zandri dust and highlighted with Ushabti bones right after. For the works, I based them in Mechanicus Standard Grey, still the longest paint name ever, and highlighted them with Administration Grey using the dry brush technique. The final touch, the thing that made everything look better, the grass. I used the Moldian Corpse Grass tufts. I just put them on the base, but you can glue them if you want. I recently needed to glue some that were completely gone for the base. I finished all these Marines in just 1 week, but I exceeded the time by 8 hours. So, if I didn't push myself some days to make more than the 8 hours planned, I would have never succeeded in this challenge. So, it's time for the epic reveal! What 4,000 points of Space Marines looks like fully painted. I hope you liked this video. Subscribe if you want to see more. And if you want to see me do something similar on the Henry Cavill's Dream Army, just click here. But I exceeded the time by 8 hours.